All right, hello everyone. Welcome to episode number 80, going live with Good Soil. We've been doing this every week for I think 80 weeks straight. Maybe we skipped 1 week, I think Christmas last year or something, but other than that, I think we've done every Tuesday for 80 weeks straight. Pretty impressive uh, streak here. Tesla today is not at a new all-time low. We broke our streak of 5 Tuesdays in a row of Tesla being at a new low, I think, a new 52-week low. I think for the last 5 or 6 Tuesdays. We were live streaming at new
Yeah.
52-week lows, unfortunately. So today it's down, but it's not a new low. It's just, close to the low.
What I'm curious about though is it seems that every time we stream over the course of the hour, it drops like, $5 or $10. So let's see how
Yeah.
this, hour goes. And if it
Yeah.
goes up, then maybe that'll be the new kind of bullish technical analysis.
Yeah, you never know. Superstition was the word I was looking for last week. Eric, okay. So we're doing this live on YouTube, our YouTube channel for Good Soil Investment Management, and we're also doing it on Twitter Spaces live at the same time. I would encourage many more YouTubers who live stream to do it on Spaces at the same time. It's very easy. I have a small tweet thread about it. It's simple. DM me or Matt if you want to know. It's simple, but it increases your exposure. It's good for Twitter and Spaces and so forth. So let's start. We kick things off with the macro, then we go to Tesla and Elon Musk and other interesting stories. If there's anything crypto or anything interesting about Roblox, Rocket Lab, or Lemonade, we go over that, and then we do Q&A at the end. Total, it's about an hour. So first, macro market Monday. The big thing macro market this week is the CPI on Thursday. The CPI print, right? I mean, that's really the big thing. But yesterday, there was an inflation expectations report released by the New York Fed, and it seems to have, all these little points we have to really keep a close eye on, because all these little points in the macro market, all these little reports and prints are supposedly influencing what the Fed is going to do next with interest rates, and or when they're going to pivot their language before they pivot the actual lowering rates or pausing rates and so forth. So, what was your take on the inflation report, man? I know you took a look at it.
Yeah, so this is from the New York Fed, and they had two data points. One was their 1 year inflation expectations, and the other is their 5 year, so a shorter term and a longer term inflation expectations. Their 1 year out inflation expectation they actually lowered, so it was at 5.2%, and they lowered that down to 5.0%. So that certainly indicates that they're kind of seeing some signs of what we've been talking about for a long time, and what Elon was talking about several months ago, that the kind of leading indicators of inflation are kind of showing that the rate is coming down quite a bit. But then the 5 year inflation expectation, which is obviously a longer term view, they actually increased that from 2.3% to 2.4%. So it's kind of interesting that they're bringing down the short term forecast while simultaneously raising the longer term forecast. So it's kind of a mixed report, but to me, it doesn't even make any sense. Like, what are they? Like, first of all, who trusts the Fed's inflation views when they can't even get like the rear view mirror? Like, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, how?
Yeah.
So how are they going to get years like 2 through 5 accurate?
Yeah.
When they've been like so bad at the short term. So like, I just, it doesn't even make sense. Like, what are they seeing that will increase the longer term while the 1 year is going down? So it's
Yeah,
just.
and they've noted that in their language recently. Some of the Fed governors or some of the board, they've been talking the last few days, and even Jamie Dimon this morning, who allegedly, he's like the top banker individual in the country. So of course he's probably, if they're talking to any finance people that are in the private sector, it would be Jamie Dimon would be probably like on the list, you'd think. So he's probably had discussions with Fed, and I think it would be great if Elon Musk could talk to the Fed. He mentioned he'd be open to talking to them in like a Twitter Spaces or something, and I don't see why they wouldn't want to talk to like the top businessman of our time who's manufacturing the most of American-made cars right now and so forth. So I don't see why they wouldn't talk to him. But they're talking to Jamie Dimon apparently. That's my suspicion, and he's
Well, they'll
saying that
probably.
there's like, yeah. What were you saying, Matt?
I was just gonna say they probably talked to Mary Barra before they talked to Elon Musk. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Oh, that's awful. Yeah, that's an awful joke. That's like a dad joke right there. So,
Except that it's real, so it's so ridiculous.
yeah, it's real. That's why it's awful. But it's just like some truth to it. That's what makes jokes funny sometimes, I guess. But so, what I'm thinking is, why is the Fed trying to position itself to keep rates high or raise them higher than everyone thinks, even when the inflation reports we're seeing today show that inflation has come down. Like the CPI report on Thursday that we're all looking at, the Cleveland Fed has their own, they call it nowcasting. It's like their own prediction of what the month over month is going to be, and it changes leading up to. It's usually pretty close. It's not too far off usually within like 10 basis points or something like that. Well, it's saying for December, the month over month is 0.12. Okay. That's like, that's a 2.4% annualized rate, for December. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's right on target with what they want. And that's the month over month. And it's been low most of the last several months anyway. I mean, so the most current month over month inflation numbers, it's showing a trend down to like 2%. And yet the Fed is like talking up that they think long-term inflation is going to be higher than we expect, like you said, with this report.
Yeah.
It just seems so suspicious to me. Like there's some
Yeah.
inflation boogeyman they want to fight and make sure it never comes back, and they're going to like over tighten and make sure it doesn't come back, even though we've beaten it or something.
Yeah, which is so interesting because the 1 year or sorry the kind of month over month figure, like you said, is already within target. But based on the New York Fed data that we already saw, they're expecting inflation to creep back up in sometime over the next couple months, the next 12 months. So like if the next month's rate is less than the 2% annualized rate, if you compound that month, that 1 month figure over 12 months, I think what's the math? It's like 1.8% or something like that. I did the math yesterday.
So
right.
Like 0.12, I'm thinking 24 months, but 12 months, it's like 1.4% compounded or 1.3%.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Yeah,
exactly. So if you do that math, then what the Fed is implying when they say that the 1 year CPI forecast or inflation forecast is 5.4% is that at some point in the future, not this month, they think the inflation is going to rise. But what is the basis for that assumption? Like when all the commodity prices are coming down, when like home sales are getting hit really hard, like the economy is clearly slowing. And the decision right now that they're talking about is whether to raise 25 or 50 basis points. It's not whether they're comfortable where they are. So to me, it's like, there's clearly this bias towards overcorrecting on the downside, which will, really hurt the economy, will, certainly hurt jobs, will certainly hurt the stock market. And then, which out of Powell's own mouth, he said, we've got the tools to fix it on the back end. So it's just kind of crazy because they're accelerating into the wall.
I have two theories for why this is the case right now, why it's so confusing to us to put this together. You want to hear them, Matt?
Yeah.
The two theories?
Let's hear it.
The first theory is that it's almost like anti-signal they're putting out, like not noise, sort of like they're trying to strong mouth raising rates long term to keep that in our mind so that we don't know the masses, all of us investors, everyone in the general public who's looking at forward interest rates and, setting forward interest rates and discussing what they're going to do with their business in the future. They don't think that the Fed's going to start lowering rates in the next few months back to, towards 2% or whatever, lower them substantially from here. Because if we all started thinking that the Fed's ready to lower rates soon, guess what happens? Then not only does the stock market start going back up, which maybe they don't necessarily want for another reason, I'll tell you in a second, but more importantly, maybe they don't want wage inflation to creep up and they want the economy to be in like a slowdown mode, right now to make sure inflation, is solved. Because if too quickly everyone starts lowering rates, if they start lowering rates and then people are still paying, everyone running businesses is like, oh, the economy's back to normal already, so I'm just going to keep paying higher wages to get the better employees. And then it just doesn't stop wage inflation, for example. So that's one theory, is that they need us to all think and buy into the idea that interest rates are going higher for a longer period, even though they know that could very well change anytime. And the other theory, what do you think about that theory first? Do you think that's plausible or no? Or do you think that's too insincere?
I think they definitely want that to happen. They kind of have talked about, kind of, I don't know if they've explicitly said breaking the consumer's back, but that definitely seems to be the interpretation of their actions. I mean, every time we get a good employment report, the stock market tanks. It's like, oh no, the economy's too good. Like the Fed's going to screw us over for longer. So, okay, what's the second theory?
So my second theory, and you tell me what you think the likelihood of both are afterwards. Or maybe I'm just crazy conspiracy theorist guy, or I don't know. But the second theory I have is the last like 5 years or seven, 7 years, whatever, the last 5 years before they started raising rates, when you look at it from like when you stand back and kind of look at it from a historical perspective, it's kind of nutty with like close to zero interest rate. The last 5 years of zero interest rates basically has been really nutty. Like not just because of COVID, but and everyone having to stay at home, but like look how many crazy startups there's been. Like people are starting up anything and everything out of their garage just with an idea and a PowerPoint presentation, getting millions of funding, millions of dollars of funding. Like it was like a big game. Startup founders were just like salespeople selling ideas to get tons of funding and not even producing, and then moving on to the next startup. It was like serial entrepreneurs, not even producing things, just getting rounds of capital from all kinds of FOMO angel investors that had free access to free interest rates, and there's just huge money supply. And then there's like this crypto craziness that popped out of nowhere, sort of for like the Fed and the lawmakers and such. Like, how do we control Bitcoin and these other cryptocurrencies now, NFTs, and it's just the world got a little weird for a while for the people in charge. I feel like it's like, how do we corral this? This is a little nutty. Like people are leaving their jobs of like doing productive things for society to stay at home and create digital signatures they can try to sell for much more money. This is just a backwards world. How do we get out of this? And so they don't want to go back to that. And so they want to make sure everyone is, making what they may, what people see as it just that type of movement to, and I don't see how there's like a coordinated effort necessarily, but that type of environment, maybe there's like high level discussions or something where like we don't want to set the stage for that type of environment in our economy again. That was like poisonous to the future of society or something they think. I don't know. But that's my conspiracy thinking of why they want to keep interest rates high. What do you think about that one?
I mean, I don't know that it's so much of a conspiracy. I mean, there's been a lot of commentators that, and frankly, I think there's truth to both the points that you made. I mean, when Bored Ape Yacht Club like JPEGs are selling for more than a house, like
Yeah.
that's looking a little frothy to me. And at the time,
Yeah.
I was commenting on that, like what's the staying power of this? Like in 10 years, isn't this going to look a little kitschy? Like
Yeah.
is it even at all remotely possible that like these are going to have the same kind of pricing power in 10 years? And like nobody ever wanted to talk about 10 years of even of like the Bored Ape or the NFT whoever's that were like super optimistic about all this stuff. So I think there are a lot of the kind of seasoned veterans that have been through a bunch of cycles that just look at something like that and they're just like, what the heck? Like people are staying home to work on projects like these, and there was a lot of like outright fraud in the crypto space.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, like I think, and I sympathize with those views, honestly. Like we
Yeah.
should. Things were a little bit too frothy.
Yeah, things were
And
getting
so
crazy. People were leaving their job. People made a bunch of like, I personally benefited in the stock market greatly with Tesla and all that, and I was able to leave my job. But people were doing the same thing, just buying and selling NFTs and cryptos, and leaving their jobs to be able to just like retire off of like large amounts of wealth they made from NFT, building out NFTs, or whatever. And it was just getting weirder and weirder every year. There was like this new weird iteration of where it was going.
yeah, did you ever see that People guy? He would just do
Yeah,
like some digital art every day, and I don't really follow him that closely, but I didn't
yeah,
particularly care for the stuff that he was putting out. But it was,
yeah. It's cool
admittedly
looking.
interesting, at least cool looking.
Yeah.
But he was like
Similar
getting
to what
$100
Dolly can
million
produce too.
dollars
Yeah.
in like a
Yeah.
couple years. It was just like
Yeah.
insane amounts of money.
Insane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's certainly a good thing. I think that people are getting back to like truly value-added jobs in society, and I'm curious if you've heard a bit about this, but like on the All In podcast, Chamath was talking about how he hadn't really looked at his household budget in like 2 years, and he was like kind of
Yeah.
surprised at how much he was spending, and so he started
Yeah.
like reining that in. My wife
Yeah.
and I had just done the same thing, and we're like, like we've been spending way too much money. We haven't really been tracking our like monthly expenses too closely. Let's like
Yeah.
rein that in. Like I heard from like 3 other people randomly, all in the course of about a week, that had kind of gone through the same exercise. And so if that is indicative of any type of like kind of like broader trend, which I think it probably is, because I'm not regularly talking to people about like their household budgets, but if
Yeah.
people are doing that across the board, then like that's got to be deflationary too.
Yeah.
So you like stacking all these things together. I do think the economy is going to be in a tough position this year, but that'll be deflationary. And so I think the Fed
Yeah.
policy is going to have to change at some point.
So my question is, if the Fed really wants to keep rates high, they're determined and they're telling the public they're keeping rates high because they want to keep inflation away and they don't want inflation to come back, even though they think they've solved it temporarily, they say. But like you said, if we actually enter a deflationary environment where the CPI print, let's say on Thursday, instead of positive 0.12 month over month, what if it's negative 0.2? And then the next month it's negative 0.3. Next month it's negative 0. Can they even keep interest rates high if we're in a deflationary environment? Is that even like, what do you think from a macroeconomic perspective? Would that like, what would that do?
Yeah. We seem to be in the minority in this view, and honestly, I don't think that we're kind of expecting deflation just out of like hopes that like the Fed will pivot and then like Tesla will go to the moon. To me, it's just this looking at all the leading indicators. I posted a note about like the Henry Hub natural gas prices today and how those were at like $5, $8, $9 per MMBTU for like almost all of last year. And they're finally coming back down sub $4 now. I think it was like 360 something this morning. And that is such a huge driver of inflation because it affects the input cost for so many just like components that use natural gas for some sort of industrial process. It really sets the clearing prices for electricity in wholesale markets because natural gas power plants are like kind of on the verge of like do they get dispatched or not? And that's entirely driven on the spot price of natural gas. So like if that price stays low or like back to the $3 range, which is where it was for like forever, because when we had this like glut of natural gas, all the kind of economics of it is it's profitable to get out of the ground for U.S. Producers at roughly $3, which is where it is right now. It's like just over $3. But it's unprofitable like sub $3. So it's kind of like this floor where a bunch of new supply will come online at roughly $3. So now that we've gotten through this kind of crazy disruption of supply chain and like just prices getting out of whack, to me we're going to settle back down into that like roughly $3 range, which will lead electricity prices lower. And so then as that takes effect over the next 6 months, call it, through the supply chain and through the economy, like that will absolutely be a deflationary pressure, a very meaningful one in my mind, across a variety of inputs in the economy. So I just looking at all the data and the slowing economy and people watching their spending, I don't understand how we could possibly have like very meaningful inflation going forward from here. So I don't know. I'm becoming more and more convinced that the Fed's going to have to change policy.
I think so too. I think they're going to try to scare us all as much as possible until that time happens that they're going to keep rates high, and then it'll be like a swift change. And I wonder what the stock market will do at that time. Will it be a quick, covering of shorts and 10% move forward in a week, or what? When it becomes somewhat clear that the Fed is changing their language and ready to pause and even reverse rates or something like that. So. Yeah, I think it's possible we see that in the next 6 months sometime. But for until that happens, the market could get scared and down another 10 or 20%, even. Who knows? Lots of things can happen. So I see Andrew Bazile saying ChatGPT and the like may reduce the need for white collar workers. I think there's truth to that. ChatGPT, I've been playing with it. I know a lot of people have been playing with it. Just like DALL-E, was also very novel and cool to use for things, and we've tried to explore using it for like thumbnails, but it's still like it's novel and new. But I'm not like I want to see it actually being used. Like I hear stories of people using ChatGPT in their daily work for help, for things, and that's good. But I personally have not experienced. I've experienced the idea of trying to use, like, I've tested it out with like, hey, if I start a restaurant, what's my business plan? What should I call it? Give me some kind of cool names that I could potentially use for the name, like of my, like the peppers porridge or something like that, like different names that I thought were kind of cool. But like, I don't trust it for really important things, like putting my money to work for a business. Like I would have to look over everything it's telling me. Like, and maybe it gives me some initial idea, but I'm still going to have to spend time looking over and adjusting because I know it's just scraping the internet from all the information from up to 2021. It doesn't even have the latest information, number one. And number two, it gets things wrong. Like if you argue with it about like energy, Matt, you'll find all kinds of like idiosyncrasy, all these little wrinkles that they had that you really just can't trust it. But for someone that doesn't know much about energy, and if I ask it energy questions about energy efficiencies, it'll give me answers that sound really professional, and I'll be like, oh, that's great, I'm going to use that. But I would be wrong to do that because there's all these little wrinkles in it, you know. So I
Yeah.
think people are realizing that, and for very general, normal things, it's probably useful. But for anything specialized that there's money at stake, I'm not sure people are trusting it for that use case yet, and I'm not sure when that'll happen. Any thoughts on that? Like Chat GTP?
Yeah. So, I'm not a coder, but I have heard from several coders, James Dalma even saying that he's found it incredibly useful for coding, which
Hmm.
to me, like that makes sense in a way, because coding is like a very like right or wrong kind of language where, you've got to get
Translations.
your,
It's like
yeah,
translating your ideas into coding. Yeah, that makes sense. Like I saw someone
exactly.
translate a whole Tesla China article interview with Grace Tao yesterday from using ChatGPT.
Exactly. So I
Mhm.
think there are use cases like that are, very value add, that, do save people time, that are, incrementally, it's like very positive for the economy and for, like people's efficiency in their workday. But yeah, for like all the stuff that I've tried to use it on, for like stuff that we do at Good Soil, or like I've tried like even drafting emails, and it doesn't sound like me, so like it's just not
Yeah,
words that I would use. And so I just don't feel
yeah,
comfortable, relying on it, because like your energy example was perfect. Like I've even tried like a couple technical things that I know a lot about, and I'm just like,
yeah,
it's kind of missing the boat with what I would do. So,
yeah,
if I was like a stupid high school kid that didn't know anything, like I would absolutely be using this to like do my homework and like write my
yeah.
papers.
And you could
Um,
get by with it for that. Yeah,
you could get by with it, but then like thinking about like how I would write 20 years ago versus now that I know a couple things, and I
yeah.
have localized expertise in a few areas, it's like I 100% would not use it for anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting. I'm not convinced. Just like I was never convinced that Bored Ape NFTs was going to be the next Black American Express card for everyone in the future, or whatever people were marketing it as. You know, something new comes out, we all get excited about it so quickly. It's the next new thing everyone's excited about. But sometimes we get ahead of ourselves, and things don't turn out. They don't pan out the way we're excitedly they will. I mean, I think there's promise in the technology, but it just might take more time than people expect. You know, like it might not ChatGPT for generalized things is helpful now, but for anything specific, very that's a lot of money on the line. I don't think people are going to trust it for a while for that type of stuff. So we'll see. So
Yeah.
anyway, that could just be my ignorance. I don't know. I'm sure there's like people, big fans of ChatGPT, like, hey, you don't understand. You're missing So let's go on to Tesla. We'll talk. That's just my thoughts on that. But we'll go on to the big thing. Tesla's come up almost $1 since we started talking. All right, let's keep it going. So Tesla, right? Tesla China price change. That's the big news I think of the week, right? I mean, is there anything bigger than the Tesla China price drop that you can think of? I think that's the biggest thing we should start
No,
with, right?
that's definitely the big thing. I mean, that was like the huge concern was demand in China. I think that's what like triggered the whole rundown, or collapse in Tesla in Q4, was just the China demand was really slumping. So we were expecting a price increase. We didn't know when. I was kind of surprised that it didn't happen like right away on January 1st. But then, sure enough, it came. Were you surprised at the magnitude, Emmett? Roughly, what was it,
Yeah.
between $5,000 and $10,000, roughly, depending on which model.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was surprised at the magnitude until people showed like the chart of how the price increases. It's basically
Yeah.
just going against what the price increases were for the last like 6 or 9 months or a year or whatever, and just going slightly below the lowest price it was in the past. And that makes sense if inflation has come back down and they've gotten efficiencies and scaling with rights law going. That makes sense to me that they can keep margins stable at this new capacity with efficiencies and no more inflation and such. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like they needed to do something pretty drastic. The surprising thing I thought was like the mixed reports that we were getting out of China. One was like that there would be like the same picture of like a crowded store, and it's on the one hand the bulls are saying like, oh, like look at all these customers flocking to the stores to buy Teslas. Like like the
Yeah.
website is down
Yeah.
because there's so much demand. And then like the Taylor Ogans of the world are like posting the same thing and saying, oh, look at all these unhappy customers like protesting Tesla because
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
price increase. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's so hard to get like trustworthy
Yeah.
data on what's actually going
Yeah.
on the ground there. I think
Yeah.
the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle.
A little bit, yeah. And we talked to our source. We touched base with him on the ground, the guy we interviewed about Tom Zhu, and I trust him. He seems very honest and fair minded when it comes to Tesla, and knows the space well in China. And he said 99% of those reports that people complained are untrue, and that it's like a lot of clickbaity stuff that, like, sure, 5 or 6 people gathered together the day after at a few showrooms, but it was all peaceful protests and no fights or anything and no violence. And as soon as they brought up their points, they were dismissed with the same explanation that kind of Grace gave in her interview about, margins coming down, and they went away. And sure, there's going to be some social media people that want to make a spectacle of it, right? And they know it'll get clicks and
Yeah.
go crazy over a Weibo or whatever. Just like the lady who stamped on the roof about the brake failure. Remember, that was like the first
Yeah.
thing. So that formula works. It got her a ton of followers and influence, I'm sure, and she was like very popular all over Weibo and social media for a while. And now other people are trying to use that same formula to like create a spectacle of some sort and have this video or picture go viral where they get a whole bunch of social media influence suddenly and they become an influencer of some sort. So I suspect there's a lot of that going on in China, maybe more so than we even see going on. I mean, that goes on here in the US too, but maybe I feel like that goes on more in China now than we even suspect, that type of kind of desire for fame.
Yeah, it does seem like that sort of thing gets more viral attention than it does in the US. Like, if I went and like stomped on the hood of a Rivian and said like, oh, it almost killed my family, like people would not, like, they'd be like, oh, what's wrong with that guy?
Yeah, it wouldn't go viral.
It seems like it definitely would not.
Although you had that one
I think
video, remember you had that one video of trying to open your door and that went viral, remember?
Yeah.
Who would have thought that would have? That probably got you 10,000 followers. Who knows?
It was, yeah, that was crazy. That was like by far, it had something like 25 million impressions. Just my door handle was stuck.
Yeah.
And apparently all you need to do is just like bash it with your fist, but I just didn't know that.
Yeah.
And that works fine. So like, it was such not a big deal, but like the Tesla Q community just like ran with it and just like, oh, like you can't use a Tesla in cold weather because the doors will freeze.
And there's something about actual video, like versus someone talking, there's something about actual video footage, even if it's like a 10-second, like look at TikTok, right? How quickly it's gone up. Like there's something about those 10-second clips of like a person actually experienced something and you can feel like them and put yourself in their position and it goes viral versus like someone saying a few words,
TikTok's like the reverse opium wars. It's like this Chinese import into America that's making us all more stupid and less efficient and like less able to think critically. It's just, it's horrible. Yeah. And like I've tried around like looking at YouTube Shorts, which is obviously like pretty much the same thing. Yeah. And it's so addictive. It's like, it's awful. We really need as a society, I think, to find ways to like not let our kids or ourselves even just like get stuck on that stuff because it's ridiculously addictive.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what else?
Anyway, we've gone all over the place here. We had an outline.
Tesla. Yeah. What else do we have on Tesla for today? I'm looking at my outline.
So there was the U.S. inventory levels. That was one thing that was a little bit surprising. If you do the tracking of the new inventory available for sale, when Tesla had that price cut at the end of the year, at the end of 2022, the new inventory level just plummeted like down close to zero. Then after the new year, we were kind of expecting that sort of trend to continue because the IRA credits would be in effect. But with the uncertainty around which models qualify, and there's been reports that the Tesla, they're
employees,
not dealers, but like employees, like won't even talk about the IRA. So they're not going to say if you qualify or not. So I think there's this thing which should be a catalyst, and I think will be eventually, but it is apparently not being a catalyst for the moment because consumers are just so uncertain about whether they'd even qualify for them, and it's not being pushed by Tesla.
Yeah.
So the inventory levels have really spiked quite high in the first couple of days of January. So that's something definitely to keep a close eye on, because if that
Yeah.
trend continues, then I think we should expect a price cut in the U.S. Or some other sort of kind of promotion
Yeah.
to clear that inventory.
Yeah, I'd be curious. Is there any way to check like inventory letters of inventory levels of all the other EVs that are not Teslas? I mean, I know they're like held at dealerships is different because if there was inventory levels building up of the other EVs that presumably are available, for the tax credit right now, um, but there's a buildup instead of those being sold off, then you might presume that people are just holding off on their EV purchase altogether, whether it's going to be a Tesla or something else until they get clarity on whether the Model Y or Model 3, gets that deduction. I don't know. I feel like people are pretty smart when they're spending a lot of money, like a car purchase. They're not going to just, some people will just, buy it like without thinking too hard about it, maybe. But I think a lot of people are very, um, careful about such a large purchase, and they want to say, just like in China with the price cuts, people are sensitive to that. People in the US are very sensitive too. I think a lot of people want to get the best deal and don't want to miss out on like a huge $7,500 tax deduction by just not waiting a week or two to figure out if that really qualifies or not. And if it doesn't, maybe they actually would go to like a Chevy Bolt or whatever instead, but they're waiting. I think, that's my suspicion. There's a large group of savvy, smart buyers kind of just waiting. That's my thought.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, it's yeah, I think it's pretty clear that the economy is softening, and I was not thinking that the U.S. would have to have a price credit because of the IRA, but given the as far as that has said, like the IRS essentially just screwed Tesla with the qualification of the Model Y. That I think that came as a surprise, and so we may need to, if that doesn't change soon, then I think we probably are going to need to see a price cut here
Yeah.
in the States.
Yeah. Yeah. And Farzad sent us an interesting metric, an infographic, sort of about new vehicle day supply by major brands as of the end of November 2022. And from like a big picture historical perspective, this sort of makes sense. At some point, Tesla would be in the line down the middle, the healthy supply line at some point, maybe in the future. And I'll just retweet this right now so people can see what Farzad had. I seen this before too. But it's a good infographic to keep in the back of your mind for, down the road at some point, Tesla should be in that like middle line, closer to that middle line. And you could say maybe they're getting closer to it now, but it just doesn't sit right with me at the moment with such a sudden increase in inventory, coincidentally with, the end of the year, that $7,500 deal getting, coming off by Tesla coming off. So, it just feels like there's certainly a bubbling up of supply. People not wanting to purchase their car yet. It seems like the last 2 weeks or since January 1st. So
Yeah,
hopefully we'll get clarity from the IRS on those IRA guidelines very soon, so that we can see what happens with Tesla.
And as Tesla investors, I think it's easy to forget that like auto sales are seasonal on top of being cyclical. So Q1 is historically the weakest quarter for car sales just in general. People don't like to go out in the cold. They've just spent a lot of money on the holidays and Christmas, and so for whatever reason, Q1 is just generally a weak quarter anyways. And I think, was it back in 2020? I want to say there was weak sales in Q1, and like Tesla had to cut prices, and so a lot of maybe newer Tesla investors are kind of surprised that Tesla would ever cut prices, or that like there is any seasonality in auto. But like this is really not new. I mean, the last 2 years, like we were talking about, were extreme in the economy for a variety of reasons, and so Tesla had to raise prices just because the backlog got so extreme.
Yeah.
But now we're kind of in a more normal situation. I think Tesla's obviously going to continue to gain market share. But that doesn't mean that they've got unlimited demand the way that they seemed to, 12 months ago.
Yeah. And I see DRK in the YouTube comments saying we're not going to get clarity from the IRS until March, on their decision for any IRA adjustment clarity or guidelines, I guess. So if that's true, we're in for 6 or 8 weeks of uncertainty here, I think, with Tesla supply demand imbalance in the US. I'm not saying there is a supply. I think there's going to be uncertainty around what the imbalance really is and how it'll get cleared up as that clarity from the IRS comes about. Because I would imagine if Tesla's going to put another $5,000 price break on all the Teslas, if they're weighing whether or not to do that, they also want to wait until they get clarity from the IRS on this, before they decide to put that into effect, right? So I would imagine if Tesla was going to do something like that, that wouldn't be until March, if that's when we're waiting until to get clarity from the IRS.
Yeah, I mean, and they could do some stuff in the meantime. I mean, I've seen some people speculate on making the 7-seat Model Y like the standard. So like maybe you could do that. Like there's even this crazy idea, which maybe isn't so crazy, of like adding a 300-pound like lead weight to all vehicles, like to qualify for the credit, which is just ridiculous, and then have like enable it to be removed for free at the time of delivery or something like that. I don't know if Tesla would be quite that direct in terms of like gaming the system, but I think there are things they could do to like tweak pricing to get consumers to opt for these vehicles that do qualify. But it kind of remains to be seen, and the fact that even ones that which do clearly qualify for the IRA today, like for everything I've heard is that like the sales associates at Tesla are not like saying, yes, like if you want to qualify for the IRA, here's the one you should buy.
Yeah.
Which that's an opportunity. Like clearly it's going to lead to inventory building up and maybe some pricing pressure in the near term. But like eventually it's going to be clear like which ones qualify and which ones don't. And like Tesla's going to be trained to like push those. And so we certainly do have some uncertainty right now, but like whenever the clarity does come and Tesla starts like pushing that demand lever, like to me, that's just the opportunity. So uncertainty is not fun, but it's only upside from here, I think, in terms of that particular demand issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the other piece of Tesla news we were going to cover, I think, is the Cybertruck Gigapress getting shipped to Austin. It seems in time to kind of maybe use it for that March 1st Investor Day, because it takes, I've heard from Rob Maurer's podcast, I've heard before, that it takes like a month or 6 weeks to kind of unload and get it ready once it's delivered. So that would time well with the March 1st Investor Day to kind of showcase it a little bit for the Cybertruck. I mean, that's exciting. And there's also rumors of a Idra press similar size being delivered to China, and everyone's speculating that it's going to the Shanghai factory in China, and that would make sense. Maybe they're going to produce the Tesla Cybertruck in China for all of Asia and all of non-US deliveries or production of the Cybertruck, because there's going to be tons of demand just inside the US for the one in Austin. So that'd be pretty neat to have the Cybertruck built both in China and in the US at the same time, sort of. You have any thoughts on that, Matt? Do you think that's likely, or what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm skeptical of Cybertruck being produced in Shanghai. Like to me, like the truck market is like very clearly centered in North America, and so for them to be adding that as like a production line, when like they haven't even figured out all of this is drastically different than like the Model 3 or the Model Y in terms of what the production process is going to look like. Like this is the exoskeleton. It's a structural battery pack, which they've got a little bit of experience with the new Model Y. But like really this is a brand new manufacturing like experiment that they're going to try to work through. So to me, it seems really unlikely that they'd be making the Cybertruck, or at least like shipping equipment for the Cybertruck production in Shanghai. So I think it could be like, I think, what is it, the front cast 3 is not structural yet in Shanghai, I want to say. So to me, it made more sense that like maybe it's just kind of that continuous improvement with the existing lines in Shanghai, because you can strip costs out if you get like the whole, like the front and rear castings done for both the 3 and the Y. Like to me, that seems like the more low-hanging fruit than trying to ramp up Cybertruck in 2 different plants, one of which is in an area which frankly does not have a lot of demand for pickup trucks. So to me, I was skeptical of that being Cybertruck related, for at least for Shanghai.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I kind of I'm hopefully cautiously optimistic, or hopefully optimistic that that it is the Tesla Giga Cybertruck for Shanghai. I've seen people in China, located in China, saying there's like huge interest in the Cybertruck in China. You know, they don't pickup trucks in general is not a huge market in China, but for whatever reason, the Cybertruck is such a different, unique design that there's like these online forums dedicated to the Cybertruck, and people that like with hundreds of people on them, like saying, "I want the Cybertruck," you know, thousands of people. So it's like sort of it wouldn't surprise me if they're going to build the Cybertruck in China as well for Chinese consumers primarily, and export it to the rest of the world from there as well. So I think that'd be pretty neat if that's the case. But it, you know, I'm not betting. I'd say 50-50 odds. That's my odds on it.
Okay, I'll definitely take the under. It
Yeah.
does make me think back. So when I was spending some time in China, this was probably 2007, 2008. You know, it's like vast majority is like small cars on the road, a lot of bicycles too. But like there was some rich person who had like a full size like GM Hummer on the road, and it
Hmm.
just like dwarfed everything, and it was like so clearly like a status symbol, and they would just like would park it on like the sidewalk like wherever they wanted to. And it was like,
Yeah.
this must be a nightmare to actually drive around these streets, which are not designed for it. So
Yeah.
like to
Yeah.
me, I could see it being a niche product within China, but maybe not one that's worth, you know, building a dedicated facility there. So yeah, I'm at like 10%. To me, it makes a lot
You're
more sense that you
10%.
do like
Oh, okay. I'm at
front
50-50. I
casting
was
for
going
the
to say
Model 3.
60-40, but 50-50, I'm comfortable with you. You're at 10-90. Okay. All right. Well, all right. And the last thing we were going to title our, I said we should title this, the live stream. It should, a cool title, like clickbaity title would be Mega Pack or Mega Dud. You know, there's so much talk about the Mega Pack these days. I mean, it's kind of clickbaity because people are like, what do you mean the mega, is it a mega dud? You know, because everyone's getting so bullish on this Mega Pack. It just feels kind of crazy, like Bored Apes all over again, but for Tesla or something. But there seems to be some truth to it, right? I mean, you've really dove into it. Mad Manx has, other people we respect. I mean, there's very high margin potential with this Mega Pack. Keyword being potential. But did you have some more info you wanted to talk about with that today?
No, I mean, no specific info so much as just like, you know, I have been digging into it a lot. And, you know, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, you and I spent a little bit of time on this stream kind of diving into it and really kind of expressing caution. But, you know, there has been a fair amount of stuff that as I've dug into it actually has credibility. So I think it's probably reasonable to assume that like the Lathrop ramp, like that's very clear, like that's happening. That's provable. The uncertainty is definitely around the margins. And
Yeah.
so I would certainly, you know, express caution around like some of the more optimistic, like 60% margins that were being tossed around for a while.
Yeah.
Certainly in the short term, like I think that's like 0% chance of happening, like in Q4 or Q1. So like, you know, I really want to both express caution, but say this is also like a real opportunity that I think will kind of manifest itself over the next, you know, year or two.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much nuance with this, and I've heard like so this zero sum game guy, and there's been a couple
Yeah.
others. I've listened to some, you know, like live streams that they've done, and it's very clear, or Twitter Spaces, that they actually don't have an energy background. So like they've got some really good points, but there's some other stuff that they're just like way off about, or like just clear they don't
Mhm.
really know what they're talking about with respect to this industry. So I don't mean that to denigrate them. It's just super complicated industry.
Yeah.
So I would just express caution to everybody. This is a very, very complicated industry. Like I was a finance like generalist for my whole career, basically up until I joined the energy industry. Like I got very good at quickly analyzing a company in any industry and kind of understanding its prospects. Energy is just like completely different, especially when you get into electric utilities. So
Yeah.
just I would urge caution, but I also do think that it's a legitimate opportunity. So we'll probably
Yeah.
have more details to share over time. But
Yeah.
and I am talking to Farzad on this tomorrow, so we'll get into some more
Yeah.
of the specifics than we can today on this stream. But
Yeah.
it's gonna be a wild ride, I think, because I think the one thing that Zero Sum has pointed out, which is legitimate, is that like nobody's giving any credit at all to Tesla
Yeah.
Energy, like in
Yeah.
2023 or beyond. And there definitely is reason that you should give some credit.
Yeah.
So it's it has the potential, I think, to really get analysts to readjust their projections and come up with some new stuff. So I'm curious to see on this Q4 call in a couple of weeks, like how much they address it, whether the margins actually do increase a little bit. I'm sure the revenues will increase, but there's some reasons that it's going to take longer to roll through their financial statements as well, just due to revenue recognition and stuff. So
yeah, I'm looking
it'll be
forward
interesting.
to hearing you talk in detail with Farzad tomorrow. Is anyone else going on with you guys, or is it just the two of you? Do you know?
I think it's just me.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think as far as correct me if I'm wrong, but you were talking about a couple other people at one point, but I think you settled on just me. So
Okay. Well, you still got a wealth of knowledge on this to go for hours on Megapack, details. And Farzad says my title of Megapack or Mega Dud is only a 6 out of 9 for clickbait title. I think it's like a 9 out of 10. I don't even know. I didn't even know the scale only goes to 9. You invented a new scale, Farzad. You should be saying 6 out of
I think
10 in the YouTube comments. You said 6 out of
I think
9.
it's
That's
like a
odd.
4 out of 20 kind of thing. I
Yeah,
think you
yeah.
the meme value.
It's a 4 out of 17. 4 out of 17. Yeah. So, Farzad, I would challenge you. Okay, I challenge you, Farzad, on tomorrow's video to title it Mega Pack or Mega Dud. If you title it that, I challenge you that it will be at the highest 80 percentage of your of your subscriber watches versus all your other videos, just because of the title alone is going to be so clickbait, so amazing. So you have a much more popular channel than us. It would be a good test for you, but I think if you name it Mega Pack or Mega Dud with a question mark, I think so many people will be like, "What? Oh, is it a dud? Really? Let me watch this," and they're going to click on it to watch it. So there you go. He says
You're
you're
going
gonna
to
be
get 4.20% of the revenue ad share. So
okay. That
you should
sounds
have like
good.
a solid 69 cents coming your way, Emmett.
Okay, all right.
And Farzad, like I keep expecting you to have some more crazy like headshots in your thing. You used to do that all the time. So if you want one,
Yeah.
you can use that little clip right there for the for the thumbnail.
And did you see someone else comment that I saw someone in the comments, Stu, said that Zero Sum left Twitter. I saw that he put a tweet out that he left Twitter too because people were trolling him too much or something. That's sad.
Yeah, I did hear that. I didn't see the tweet in particular, but yeah, it's interesting. These some of the stuff he was saying was so extreme. Oh, Farzad said he's back already. So like I really value the work that he's put out, but at the same time, like the confidence with which it's expressed, I think, is unfounded.
Yeah.
So
And I think
I urge caution that way.
I think what also kind of doesn't like irk me, just makes me, I think trolls more likely to attack as well is when it's an anonymous Twitter handle. Like,
Yeah.
when you're an anonymous sounding Twitter handle, I mean, that sounds like an anonymous Zero Sum 33 or whatever, he's got, he's disclosed, but no one knows who this person is. The person, so therefore, the person is not really taking accountability. You don't know his personal.
He does
and that's
have a
okay.
link to his LinkedIn profile, or at least
Oh,
he
he
used to.
does.
I don't know if he still does. So
Okay.
it's in a
Yeah.
roundabout way, at least.
And I can understand people don't want to show their identity, and that's fine. I chose to show my identity. Matt's chosen to show his identity. As far as a lot of people choose to show who they are, and some people don't want to. I understand that, but when you don't show your identity, it leads to a lot of suspicion, and I think it also lends itself to a lot more potential trolling than you otherwise would have. So it's just something to keep in mind, I guess. But people, for whatever reason, don't want to show who they are, and that's okay too, and I respect that. So anyway, we've talked a lot about this stuff. Let's go to Q&A. All right, Q&A. Volcenti79 on Twitter. Update on Rocket Lab. Did you add to your position? If not, are you thinking to add, and at what price target? Where do you see the stock in 1-2+ years? I mean, I still love Rocket Lab. We have closed a lot of our other equity positions. I mean, we have small positions in Rocket Lab, Lemonade, and Roblox, but most of our fund is dedicated toward Tesla exposure. That's what we know best, and that's what we're most confident about. We still, on my personal level, I have more exposure to some other stuff like we talk about, obviously, but I'm very confident still in Rocket Lab. I mean, you just look at Virgin Space yesterday, just failed trying to go to orbit, like they had a failed launch attempt going, they're doing a different method where they're trying to launch off like a plane or something so they can be mobile, and defense contractors might be attracted to that, being more flexible where to launch into low Earth orbit from in the world, versus dedicated launch pads, let's say. So they have their own unique niche of what they're trying to do with that, but they're still failing. And then you have like this relativity space that Chamath has talked about on the last All In podcast. I don't know if you saw that. And he's talking about relativity space. I'm like, what are you crazy? How do you ignore Rocket Lab? I mean, a lot of people seem to ignore Rocket Lab.
Yeah.
They have such a successful cadence of launching things to low Earth orbit. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it was kind of hilarious hearing Chamath talk about that because he's like, SpaceX is the clear leader, but then it's relativity. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's just, he's like, obviously,
It's
Rocket Lab
money.
is,
That's where his money is. His money is in that
yeah,
SPAC
exactly.
or the
He's talking his
early
book a little
investor.
bit.
Yeah, yeah. They all talk their book on there, and that's okay. That's where, of course, they're going to do that, right? So.
Yeah. So no, but I mean, I think just to add to that, like, the I don't want to say the problem, but the difficulty, that we see with, like Rocket Lab, Lemonade, and Roblox is just in the current market environment. You kind of need them to either turn the corner on profitability, which most of them are very far away from, or you need like the Fed policy to change, because otherwise, it's like you've got just a long runway of kind of chugging along and making incremental progress. And we just don't think that even if they are making big fundamental progress, that it's going to result in outsized returns in the next year or two, let's say, absent some big kind of Fed policy reversal. So just for that reason, I think we like the risk reward of Tesla a little bit more right now. So that's really the reason for our kind of portfolio shift more than anything specifically with Rocket Lab.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of the space companies that are, they've all been hit hard, all the SPACs, and Virgin Galactic hit hard too. They're all hit hard. And I think when Starlink comes around to IPOing, and Chamath mentioned, and he's an investor in SpaceX too, right? So he did mention that he thinks Starlink will go public in 2023 at some point, and I think that's likely too. I'm not sure it's definite, but I think it's more than 50% chance that Starlink goes public in 2023 later this year. And if that happens, I think that valuation he speculated would be like half of SpaceX total's valuation, or like 75 billion, or I think it was thrown out or something. But if Starlink goes public at like a $75 billion valuation, right? What's going to happen to all the other space? Like, just like when Tesla went way up, what happened to all the other EV providers, whether it's Lucid, Rivian, they all drifted up really quickly with it, because everyone's like, what's the next best thing? What's the next best one? And so the same thing is going to happen to other space companies, and Rocket Lab will be a benefactor. People take a closer look at Rocket Lab and the others and realize that Rocket Lab is actually the clear second place, I think, to SpaceX, and it'll get it'll be rewarded well, hopefully, in valuation. So that's my guess. But yeah, I mean, that may or may not happen this year. It could happen 3 years from now. I don't know. So it's hard to say.
Yeah.
So from Elon Musk, I love that name on YouTube comments. E and then Elon Musk. Okay. Question: is it possible that Tesla stock is cursed by Elon rubbing the powers that be the wrong way, like the Twitter files? Well, the good news, we were going to talk about Elon Musk in general. We didn't get to that on our regular outline because we were getting out of time. We wanted to go to Q&A, but it seems like Elon Musk is not being as controversial the last couple of weeks. I think a lot of people have noticed that. And someone saw like some of his someone, I think Naveen Nagrini, that's his Twitter handle name. He messaged me, or on a chat group I'm in, something about an idea that like that Elon's close circle has been tweeting on Twitter, like messages messages they know Elon is reading, of like, stay out of politics, it's not a good game, or retweeting Elon's old quote of like, politics is like where is at least satisfactory. And even Bill Lee, who's a friend of Elon, said something like, Elon, maybe it's better to be an umpire, and something like that, something along Dave Lee's recent thread, where Elon probably should stay out of politics. And so it seems like Elon is heeded some of the advice from his close friends, or come to his own decision that he needs to probably tamper it down when it comes to politics. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think he basically admitted that much when he talked about, there was that poll, should I keep talking about politics, or should I keep shooting myself in the foot? And so like, he's kind of in a joking way kind of admitting that, I probably, stepped a little too close to the to the something fire that was just a net benefit. Yeah. So I think we'll see him to back down from that. He's clearly still intent on releasing the Twitter files. I mean, there was another one that dropped in last night. So like, I think he thinks that the good of that is kind of outweighing the bad that it's caused by. But at least with the Twitter files, what seems to be happening is that like people who care about that are like pretty scandalized. And then everybody else is just like, who cares? Boring. So like, it's not, to me, it's not like so damaging to his brand personally as some stuff about like deliberately saying that he's going to vote for Republicans, or I even forget what some of the more controversial stuff was, but like the kind of sins of Twitter's past management, I don't think is going to get him in as much fire as some of the stuff that he was doing previously.
Yeah. Someone in the YouTube comments, Milan, said that that Elon unfollowed Kimball, his brother.
I saw that
and Kimball
like
unfollowed Elon.
Like a bot that apparently reports who he's followed or unfollowed. Put that out.
I mean, they're brothers.
That was true
You got to think they're still friends and they still talk. Yeah, but it would be weird that they unfollow each other. I don't know. It's true.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, there's been some speculation, which I think would actually be a good idea. I may be in the minority here, but just for appearances' sake, there's been a lot of criticism of like management at Tesla. I think it would actually be a good thing if Kimball got off the board. I mean,
I agree.
If he's so focused on like food and like some other things that are like not right adjacent to what Tesla's mission is, and it's like to me, it's another attack vector of like if you're going to criticize Elon's. Yeah, exactly. So just get rid of that attack vector, bring somebody else on. Like I heard somebody saying like maybe he could bring on Barack Obama, which
I think that'd be great.
Know, but like I think it would help with appearances a lot. Like to me, Obama, like that's a good trade
to him in Tesla. Yeah, that's a very good trade. I'd trade out Kimball for Obama anytime. Biden would not, it would be not, but I think Elon respects and likes Obama genuinely. And it would be like, even if there wasn't all the political upheaval with the Biden administration, I think even if that wasn't there, I think Elon would still want Obama. So, the thing is, if he does take Obama, it might be reported as, oh, Elon's taking Obama to become more but I think Obama would be a great add to the board, to be honest, so it'd be
nice. I mean, it would. I think so. I mean, like they genuinely had a good working relationship. Obama, I think, clearly wants to advance like Tesla's mission. Like he was definitely on board with that. And I think he treated Tesla fairly during his time there. And it would certainly be, I think, an example of Elon like doing something that's not just like outright Republican focus, right? So it would kind of dampen a lot of that criticism. So
I agree.
It may help mostly for appearances more than anything. Like I'm not sure that Elon or that Obama would necessarily like come up with like grand new strategies or anything like that that'll help Tesla. But I think it probably would help in some small way.
Yeah. Let's go to the next question from T Nelly on YouTube. Tao Lin, which is is that Grace Tao, is that her American name, her English name? Tao Lin, Tesla China VP, just said.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
I think so. I think it is. Just said China will not produce a Model 2. She dispelled that rumor, apparently. Do you think Tesla, and she also dispelled the Tesla phone and that Tom Shu is second in command and something else. I forget. That's according to this interview published. Do you think Tesla will instead focus on driving costs down on Model 3 to that 25,000, 30,000 price point? If not, why no prototype yet? That's a good question. I think that this Highlander project that seems to have a lot of wheels to it. It's like basically redesigning the Model 3 to be a lower cost, more efficiently manufactured, and a better car, right? I mean, it's just like the top Model S had its big refresh with the Plaid and originally. I feel like the Highlander is like that version for the Model 3, maybe, and maybe that's like the next kind of big vehicle in China, barring the robotaxi. What do you think?
Yeah. So my gut reaction is actually exactly what Farzad says in the comment, that everything Tesla China has dispelled. They said, like, I think there was something like there were 7 rumors recently that Tesla China came out and like officially denounced. And then all of them within a month later, it was like, no, actually that was true. So like the price cuts they dispelled like back in October, and then they did them price cuts again. And so like, to me, I really just don't think that this is necessarily indicative of anything true. But like, maybe it's not, like maybe they don't call it the Model 2 or something like that. Like I think they're very clearly going to continue lowering costs. So maybe there's no official plans yet, and that's where this is coming from. Or maybe it is, like you said, it's just like this Highlander project that's going to come through and kind of do the same thing that a Model 2 would. So to me, it's like very clear that the costs are going to continue to come down. The price points are going to continue to come down. And that's going to help China to reach more market share within the domestic market, which is the biggest EV market in the world. So I don't put a whole lot of weight in this, this rumor, honestly.
Yeah, no, me neither. So from William PMCD on YouTube comments, are there any strong Chinese EV contenders that are not commonly discussed, not traded on U.S. markets? Well, BYD is traded as an ADR, as American Depository Receipt, I think, in the U.S. market. So it's not really, or on the pink sheets. Maybe it's on the pink sheets, actually. It's not even an ADR, I forget. So it's not, like Xiaopeng and Niao, they're like traded as ADRs, I think. But or maybe I have that backwards. But that's one that's not discussed enough. I think it's being discussed more in the last month because of their volumes that are surging, BYD. But I think their margins are like close to zero, and the majority of their cars are like plug-in hybrids, right? I mean, I don't think they're selling a ton of like 200, 300 mile range battery electric vehicles, are they? Matt, what do you think?
No, well, I mean, it's they are. I mean, they're certainly growing their kind of EV sales, but they also have a very large kind of plug-in hybrid business that's growing. The one company I was actually going to say, and I'm sure there's lots of others like this, but when I went to Monroe and Associates to kind of tour their facility, they had this brand I'd never heard of called a Skywell, and it was just kind of like a bare bones, EV. It reminded me a lot of like a Jeep Grand Cherokee or something like that. It was kind of that sort of size. But apparently in the Chinese market, it was priced at like roughly $29,000 or something like that. So like the technology wasn't super amazing, the acceleration wasn't super amazing, but it was still like, very solid. And it was very familiar in terms of like, if you're not a tech enthusiast or anything like that, this drove and felt a lot like just a normal, like ICE vehicle. So the problem I think is that there's this import tariff. So even if they were to import those into the U.S., they wouldn't be able to do it at that price point. So these Chinese companies are either going to need to make factories in the States, which will increase their costs, or get them so cheap that even with the import tariffs, they're competitive. At least here in the U.S., maybe they'd be more competitive in other markets like Europe. But like that was one I was really impressed with this Skywell car. I mean, it was lots of space. It was very comfortable. And it did the job. So for like if you were comparing like a $60,000 Model Y with a $30,000 Skywell, whatever it was, I was like, I could definitely see a huge portion of the market wanting the Skywell car. So there's definitely lots of them, I think, that could compete, but we're probably protected with this tariff.
Yeah. And if you guys haven't read, I retweeted at least late last night, but if you guys haven't read that interview with the Tesla China VP, Grace, released last night, a guy put a Twitter thread out translating it using ChatGPT into English. It's like 6 pictures. You can zoom in on each one to see that, and then go to the next page to read the interview. But there's a lot of really interesting information about the Tesla China EV market and what it's like there, and that Tesla is the unusual one right now, by the only one that's actually cutting their prices starting this year off, just after the 10-year subsidy has expired for new energy vehicle cars at the end of last year, while BYD and the others are actually increasing their prices because the customers are not there's just less subsidies apparently. And so Tesla is kind of doing the opposite of what everyone else is doing. And on one hand, you could say that Tesla is trying to steal market share now from the other EV players in China. But on the other hand, Grace says that she doesn't see them as competitors. She sees the gas cars as the competitors, as kind of adoption picks up even more steam in China, so that they're all kind of on the same team, just getting more traction from the gas cars. So I think that's a different way to frame it that not enough people do. A lot of people just think there's like a limited amount of EVs to be sold in China. They don't realize that the adoption is still increasing at a fast rate in China potentially versus the rest of the world. So let's do one more question. We're way over an hour here. So, all right, from Ed Jones on YouTube. Question: in the January 22nd, in the January 2022 conference call, that's I guess a year ago, Zach and Elon said energy could grow 2 to 4x in 2022. Q1 through Q3 are well below that prediction. So Q4 would have to be huge to get even 2x versus 2021. What do you see for the fourth quarter of 2022 and the first quarter of 2023? Matt, I'll let you take a stab, and then I'll have a final word on that, I guess.
Yeah, so Q3 did see a big ramp. I'm just looking at the Q4 deck from last year just to see what the total energy storage deployments were. I mean, that's the big thing is the energy storage deployments. So like last Q4 of last year, just for comparison, they did just under 1 gigawatt hour of stationary storage deployed, but that was actually lower than most of the other quarters. So like to me, I wouldn't necessarily read this as exactly like 2 to 4x the total 2021 either revenues or storage, but rather the kind of fact that Lathrop is ramping, and so you're going to see like a 2 to 4x increase on where they were, call it over like the last 12 months on average, to where they will be sometime in the next 24 months from when this comment was made. There's that concept of like S curves ramping. You can like a 6-month shift can have like a very meaningful like multi-x impact on the total output that's calculated. So to me, like the exact timing and like whether this will hit in Q4 is not necessarily the right thing to focus on. The other thing to keep in mind, which I alluded to earlier, is that like the revenue recognition on these projects, it's a lot different than cars. So like the cars, they sell them very quickly, so they're not just like hanging around in inventory. But with Megapacks, they use how nerdy into the weeds. I'll skip some of the nerdy accounting details, but suffice to say that the products, once they're produced at the Megafactory, it's not like 6 days later they hit the income statement as revenue. We don't know the exact kind of timeline of how long it takes, but a lot of it is dependent on when the projects are actually placed in service, and there can be things like the utility interconnection with the grid that can take a long time, that can delay final recognition of it. So the ramp of the factory is the important thing to watch, with the understanding that it may be a little bit longer until that ramp kind of makes its way through the income statement and becomes like a positive revenue and earnings catalyst. So this will definitely ramp. It wouldn't surprise me if we're at like I don't know, 3 or 4 gigawatt hours in Q4 and more than that in maybe 4 gigawatts in Q1 or something like that. And that'd be phenomenal, because that would be like really meaningful impact. So that's my long rant.
Yeah, and Matt knows the details way better than me. I'm excited for your chat tomorrow on Farzad's channel. I'm going to listen to that as well. But I would just be cautious. I've seen this, the hype with everything Tesla's been doing for years, and manufacturing things is hard to ramp. Like software, you could ramp with a click of a button. You can duplicate it a million times, but you just need people to sign up for it, with the key punch strokes, minimal keystrokes and so forth. And then it ramped up real fast, but manufacturing things and then, getting the order book right to match demand to match supply at the right time, it can be a lot slower, I think, even though in theory it maybe could ramp like really, like we've seen as the Tesla semis, like I would be very surprised if they produced 10,000 semis this year. I think that was like
Definitely
the number thrown out. I would not be surprised if they only produced 500 Tesla semis this year. I would not be surprised, and then 5,000 next year or something like that. So the ramp can be a lot slower. So the Megapacks, I don't know what goes into it. It looks like a big complicated block of metal battery material stuff. I just know it's not a simple like piece of gold or something pulled out of earth, and so manufacturing that, getting them in delivered and in place, purchase agreement, all the stuff that has to line up. I could see a much slower ramp than people are anticipating. And maybe theoretically capacity is for 10 gigawatt hours a year of Megapacks to be produced out of this facility, but maybe we don't get there for 3 years from now or 4 years from now. It might not. Maybe it's just like 1 gigawatt hour of that this year, and then 3 next year, and then 5.
It is 40 gigawatt hours. So even if they're only at
40.
like 10 gigawatt hours, that's the thing that maybe has me a little bit more bullish. We're doing, I don't know the exact number, but something like 5 gigawatt hours of stationary last year. They did
Power
2 gig
power walls mostly.
last quarter.
Okay.
Packs.
Mega
Because
packs.
the
Okay.
Powerwalls are just so small.
Yeah, they're tiny. But
So
didn't they used to have like just a bunch of power walls stacked on top of each other, and that was like their mega pack or something? I forgot what it was called.
well, that
Isn't
was,
that
I
what it
think,
used to be?
the like Power Pack or something like that.
Yeah,
But
the
like
power.
the economies of scale with the Mega Pack are just like so huge. So like if you think of like the number one cost component is obviously the cells, which are
Yeah.
somewhere less than $100 per kilowatt hour, right?
So the
We
power
don't know
pack
the
was like
exact.
10 power walls, right? How many power walls would it be for a mega pack? 100
Yeah.
then or something? Like if you had to put the whole amount of
Well,
batteries into it.
what's a power or what's a power wall? Is it like 7
It's what I
kilowatt
have in
hours? I
my
want to say
garage.
something like
I think
that.
it's 8 or
It's
12. I
like
can't remember.
8.
It's not 10, but it's like 8 or
So
12. One of those. God, yeah.
one mega pack, I think, is like roughly 3 gigawatt hours, something like that. So it's like a
300, something like
thousand.
that.
No, many more times that. It's like
3,000?
so 1,000
How many zeros? I'm off by zero,
power.
right?
It'd be like a factor of a million.
What? 3
Because
million power walls is a mega pack? I don't believe that. No way.
so kilowatt 13 kilowatts. Somebody says in the
Yeah.
comments, 1,000
I feel
kilowatts
like
is
we
a
had a zero or
megawatt.
two off. Yeah.
No, 1,000 kilowatts is a megawatt, and 1,000 megawatts is a
Okay.
gigawatt. So you multiply those together, you're a factor of a million. So your 1 million
That
would
can't
get
be
you
right.
to that is right.
What?
So
So if
that
if
the,
if 100,000 people in my town all had 10 a power pack, all had 10 power walls, which is way more than I even have, 100,000, then one mega pack would be more than all that combined?
okay, no. So you are right. I was a little bit off. So I was thinking of the total scaled, like if Tesla's going to do 40 gigawatt hours of capacity out of Lathrop, then it would
Okay.
be
Okay.
a factor of like roughly 2 million compared to your thing. But
Okay.
for just one mega
Okay.
pack, you're
Yeah,
right.
I'm trying to figure
It's
out
like a
what one
factor of a
mega pack
thousand.
is. So
Yeah.
1,000 power walls is about one mega pack. Okay,
It,
I
it,
can
it's
buy
probably
that
closer.
maybe.
It's probably closer to 500 because you're
Yeah,
talking
that's
about
what I
like
would
13
think.
kilowatt hours,
Yeah.
and maybe it's more like 300 or 200 actually. So because it's
Okay. Yeah, that
the
seems
mega
more
pack is
reasonable to
probably
me.
like 2.5 megawatt hours.
Yeah, that seems more reasonable
So
because I remember the power pack was like 10 of them. So mega pack would maybe be another 10x on top of that at the most, I would think. So 200, that seems okay. I can believe that. Maybe 300, maybe
3.9 megawatt hours. So the rough math would be like maybe
300, 200, 300.
about a third of the 1,000x. So like 300 ish
Okay.
x.
That's pretty good though. Yeah. I mean, so how many of these mega packs are they going to be able to deliver? I guess, right? How quickly can they ramp them up? It's taking them so much time to ramp up the power walls, which are like, 0.3% the amount of battery materials. Granted, they're separate units as opposed to one big unit, but it's taken a long time to get that ramped up. So I just don't know if the mega packs, being each one is equivalent to 300 amount of materials taken for the power wall, if they can really ramp those up very quickly. It just seems hard for me to fetch.
To me, it's like that's where the economies of scale makes a whole lot of sense because
Mhm.
you've got all the cells, like you're very good at handling all these raw cells anyways because that's like Tesla's
Yeah.
business, right? Like and
Yeah.
so the Lathrop factory at 40 gigawatt hours is roughly the same capacity as Giga Nevada. And so they know how to handle all these cells. And so now you just, instead of putting them in cars and doing all the fabrication around cars, you put them like all clumped together. There's like some racking. There's a lot of inverters you need. But to me,
Mhm.
like the process is much more simple than for like vehicle assembly.
Yeah.
So then like they fit right on a semi truck. It's like ready to go plug and play in the ground. Like they've really redesigned this thing to make it as easy as possible to install.
Mhm. Is
So
it the
to me,
size of like a cargo container? Did they make it like the exact size of a cargo container basically, so it could fit in like one of those
yeah,
containers?
so it fits in one of those semi
Oh,
trucks.
that's
Yeah,
great.
exactly.
That's
So
great.
it was really designed around like being easy and economical to
Ship.
transport. So
Yeah.
like the cost components. So like the biggest one, like I was starting to say, is like cells at less than $100 per kilowatt hour. Like I said, we don't know exactly Tesla's cost, and they're selling the integrated system at $500 per kilowatt hour. So
Hmm.
that, and on top of that, there's all these credits and stuff like that, which some of them Tesla won't qualify for. But absolutely, the customer gets a 30% tax credit on that. That's a very big change with the
Yeah.
ITC that's brand
Yeah.
new.
So the
So
demand will
there's
be there. They can sell as many as they can make. Okay, I got that, but how many can they
yeah.
make? That's my thing. I don't know if they can. Just like the Tesla Semi, I think the demand is there, but how many can they really make? I mean, it's less complex. The Tesla Semi, I read reports one or two have broken down recently, and Tesla's had to tow it and fix it or whatever,
Mhm.
and that's understandable. First adopters, early Model S owners had the same kind of thing. So, but these mega packs presumably aren't as complex machines that they're not going to like be breaking down early on. I wouldn't think. I would think they're pretty like plug and play once you finally get it there.
Mhm.
I would hope that's the case, but I'm assuming that there could be some kind of
Yeah.
problems within the mega packs early on. They have to figure out overheating or something, things melting or I don't know, who knows, but there's just lots of things that could go wrong. It's a whole new thing, and ramping it up on top of that, just like I'm skeptical. Like I
It's
think it sounds
it's not a
great.
whole
At
new
some
thing though.
point,
Like
we'll be there.
and I'm sorry that we've gone so long on this topic, but I think it's an
Yeah.
interesting conversation because, like, I'm reasonably skeptical, like you are, but I'm definitely more bullish than you are. Because this
Yeah.
is not this. It's not like they just developed this product and like are trying to ramp it like the Model 3 in
Well, it's
2017
new
or
for
something
them
like that.
ramping it. Like, it's new to get to it's not a new product. They've been producing it for a little while, but it's like new for them to produce. I don't know how many they sold in the fourth quarter. Maybe like how many mega packs do they sell? Do you think
Well,
they delivered in the fourth quarter? Like
they
100
did
of them?
they did 2.1 gigawatt hours of total stationary storage
So how many mega
in
packs would that
Q2.
be?
So, oh gosh,
If
am I
there's
going to
12
screw
mega
up my
packs?
math again here?
Yeah. I'm just trying to put
Like
numbers around, round numbers in place.
500 or something like that. I'm probably getting that math wrong.
Okay. Maybe someone in the comments. We have
But
some great commenters here. So how many mega
yeah, somebody
packs
do the
would
math
that
and
be?
put it in the comments. But
So let's say
it
it's
was a huge
500.
step up. It's by far like the most they've ever done was in Q4. But in
What was it
October, which is or
prior to
sorry, in
that?
Q3. But in Q4, that's when this Lathrop factory really started to commission. So
Mhm.
there's October 22nd or something like that. I don't remember the exact date. But there was a report about like the fact that they were actually producing. It's not really confirmed how much, but like it is clear that this factory is coming online and starting to ramp in Q4. And there's been a lot of pictures of like um, the factory itself and like all these mega packs that are going out into the shipping facility, and then like, you go back a couple days later and it's like a bunch more and the old ones have been removed. So they're definitely ramping. It's not like
Mhm.
they're going to get to like 1% of capacity this quarter and then like 5 next quarter or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Oh, I see Warren
So
Redlick in the comments joining late here. He says he doesn't know how many of the Q3 mega packs were old version versus the new
yeah,
version. Yeah, so they're
so there's
upgrading
the
the version.
XL. Yeah.
There's things that can break when they upgrade new version, or things they have to iron out kinks on as they ramp. I'm just skeptical of the ramp. I think the product is incredible. I believe the metrics of gross margins everyone's putting out there, but my manufacturing physical things, especially things like the mega pack, is difficult. I think much more difficult than any of us can understand is my thought. And so I think that the ramping up is going to be slower than people anticipate. That's my thought.
Yeah.
So that's
So
all. Yeah,
So
that's
I'm
what I
I'm
would say.
I'm curious. So we did 2.1 gigawatt hours in Q3 before this ramp. Now, granted, to Warren's point, we don't know how many were the old versus the new.
Mhm.
Um,
You don't know what
if
we
you
don't know.
assume Lathrop's fully ramped and then like maybe a little bit of extra capacity for the other factories, that would be like 10, 11 gigawatt hours per quarter. Like once they're like fully ramped and like going crazy. So roughly a 5x increase potential once they're fully ramped. Where do you think they get from 2.1 to 10? Like how long do you think, or like where do you think we are in Q4 and in Q1?
I would be surprised if Q4 is more than 3 or 3.5. I'd be
I agree.
surprised.
I
I
agree with
think it
you.
might be 2.5. I think it could be 2.5. Maybe it's even 1.5. Maybe it down ticks. Maybe it's not a smooth linear progression up as they go to the new version. So I would not
Yep.
be surprised if it's even 1.5. So I'm not baking in a steady increase of 50% ramping every quarter even. I think it's going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and clearly it seems like they made two or 3 steps forward in Q3, right? But that means maybe they're due for a step back in Q4. I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
skeptical of the quicker ramp that everyone seems to assume.
Well, and I do think that's prudent. That's why I wanted to spend. So we've gone way over, so apologies,
Yeah.
everyone. But hopefully,
Yeah.
this is helpful. I do think that this kind of caution is warranted, though. Like just because they did 2.1 in Q4 in Q3, that does not mean that they're going to get to 3 in Q4. Much
Or that
less
they're
like
even going to
10.
redo 2.1. Maybe they switch into that
Yeah,
new version and it slows down the ramp suddenly because they have to start from the
yeah.
new version.
Because those were the old ones, and so it may very well be the case that like the previous quarters, like those mega packs went into inventory and then they got deployed in Q3, but like the
Yeah.
total ramp rate is lower. So yeah,
Yeah.
Q4 to me it seemed logical that there would be a slight uptick from Q1, but like
Yeah.
I think it's going to be 12 months at least until get to like a 10 gigawatt hour per quarter run rate, and probably later than
Yeah,
that
I
if I'm
think like
honest.
3 years until they get to that rate, or 2 to 3
Oh,
years. That's
okay.
my thought. Yeah, I'd say 2 years. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 3 years, but I'd say 50-50 mark is probably, I'll say 20-21 months. So
21
one and
months.
3/4 years, yeah, is my 50-50 before they get to that, capacity you're saying 10 per quarter, the 40
Yeah,
gigawatt hour capacity. So, but
that's
I
just
think it could
the
be
later
3
thing.
years, or it could be a year and a half, or a year, the best case, but I think that's the best case is a year. So,
All right.
anyway,
How about that?
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, this has been a good chat. We went on longer than expected, and you're going to be on Farzad's chat tomorrow, talking in more detail about the Mega Pack or Mega Dud clickbait title. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm looking forward to listening to that, and hopefully next Tuesday. Yeah, this is the first Tuesday in like 5 or 6 weeks where it hasn't been a new 52-week low for Tesla. So that's good. We broke the streak. So
Yeah,
maybe
and
next
we've actually
Tuesday.
gone up like $1.50 over the course of the conversation, which is normally it's like the opposite. It's like 5% down in the 1 hour
Yeah.
that we talk.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, a lot of macro market stuff to keep an eye on this week. And we'll see what the CPI report shows on Thursday. And yeah, with that, we'll see you all next week. Good chat.